It was one of those warm, slow afternoons where the sun hangs lazily in the sky and everything feels calm. The air was heavy with that faint scent of water and fresh-cut grass. I was standing in my backyard, leaning over the koi pond, scattering a handful of feed into the water. The koi darted up, their bright orange and white bodies glistening like jewels under the sunlight. It was peaceful, just me, the fish, and the sound of water trickling from the filter. I had no idea the next hour would be anything but peaceful. I've been sheriff in this county for 8 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people will find a reason to complain about anything. But I never imagined I'd be accused of committing fish crimes. The first hint that something was off came from my neighbor's little boy, Jake. He came running up the side yard, out of breath, holding his bike by the handlebars like it had just carried him through a marathon. "Sheriff Ryan," he puffed, "Karen's outside your fence again, and she's on the phone. Now, if you live in an HOA community, you know exactly what that means. On the phone could mean calling her sister, her dog groomer, or the authorities. With Karen, you always assumed the worst." I sighed, gave Jake a wink, and walked toward the gate. Sure enough, there she was, Karen Miller, HOA president, her blonde bob bouncing as she gestured toward my yard with one hand, cell phone clamped to her ear with the other. Her face was flushed, her eyes narrow slits of fury. "Yes, officer," she said loudly, making sure I could hear every word. "It's an unlicensed facility. There's water. There are animals. I think it's illegal." She was talking about my fish. Now my koi pond is my pride and joy. I started with a small above-ground tank years ago, and over time, it grew into a proper backyard feature. Landscaped edges, water lilies, everything's permitted, inspected, and within HOA guidelines. Or so I thought. Karen, however, had made it her mission to turn my peaceful hobby into a public scandal. I decided not to interrupt her. Instead, I leaned casually against the fence. "You know," I said, when she finally hung up, "you could have just knocked on the door." Her eyes darted toward me, and I swear, if looks could kill, my koi would have been attending my funeral. "This is a violation," she snapped. "A massive violation. Our bylaws clearly state—" "Our bylaws," I interrupted, "say nothing about koi ponds." I checked, twice. Karen's lips thinned. "It's still unsightly. It lowers property values." "Karen," I said, "it's a pond with fish, not a junkyard." But she was already pulling out a notepad, scribbling furiously. "The board will hear about this," she hissed. I watched her march away, clipboard in hand, like some suburban law enforcer. And honestly, but if I've learned anything in this job, it's that people like Karen don't quit when they're wrong. They get louder. An hour later, I heard the distant wail of sirens. I frowned. Sirens? Here? This was the kind of street where the biggest emergency was a missing Amazon package. But the sound grew louder, closer, until 2 patrol cars rolled up in front of my house, lights flashing. I was about to head out when my radio crackled. "Sheriff, we've got a 1024, possible animal control violation. Address matches yours." I stopped in my tracks. She didn't. She called the cops. Here's the thing about calls in my county. Anything remotely odd or unclear gets forwarded to me, the sheriff. So technically, Karen had called me on myself. I decided to have a little fun. When the patrol officers stepped out, they were trying hard not to laugh. Officer Daniels tipped his cap. "Sheriff, we've had a complaint." "Oh, really?" I said, feigning innocence. "What kind of complaint?" Daniels cleared his throat. "Something about an illegal fish farm?" I bit back a grin. "Let's investigate." Karen appeared from her front porch, her expression smug and victorious. "Officers, thank you for coming. I've been telling the HOA for weeks that this operation is against the rules. It's an eyesore, it's noisy, and there's water, which attracts mosquitoes." I raised an eyebrow. "Noisy?" "Yes," she barked. "I can hear the water running all night." "That's called a fountain, Karen." "It's disruptive," she said, crossing her arms. The officers looked at each other, clearly trying to figure out if this was a prank. I motioned for them to follow me through the gate. We walked into the backyard, the pond sparkling peacefully in the sunlight. The koi glided lazily beneath the surface, oblivious to the suburban war unfolding around them. Daniels peered in. "Sheriff, these are just fish." "Correct," I said. "And you've got all the proper permits?" "Every single one." We turned back to Karen, who was glaring like we just betrayed her personally. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You can't just have a fish farm in a neighborhood." I flipped open my citation book. "Karen Miller?" She froze. "Yes?" "I'm issuing a warning." Her jaw dropped. "A warning? For me? For what?" "For trespassing on private property, and for filing a false report to law enforcement." The color drained from her face. "This is harassment." "No, ma'am," I said evenly. "This is the law, and you've violated HOA rules yourself. Multiple unapproved lawn ornaments for one. Also, your fence is 3 inches taller than the maximum allowed height." Her mouth opened, then closed again. You can't." "I can," I said. "And I am." The officers were barely containing their amusement at this point. Daniels coughed into his fist, probably to keep from laughing out loud. Karen sputtered for a few more seconds before spinning on her heel and storming back to her house. "This isn't over," she called over her shoulder. But it was, for now. After the officers left, I stood by the pond, tossing feed into the water. The koi swirled happily, breaking the surface in flashes of gold and white. I felt the tension drain out of me. Sometimes, wearing the badge means breaking up bar fights or chasing down suspects. Other times, it means protecting the little guys, even the ones with fins. Over the next few weeks, Karen tried a few more tactics. Anonymous letters to the HOA, complaints about unhygienic conditions. She even tried to claim the pond's water runoff was flooding her flower beds, which, considering the slope of the land, was physically impossible. Each time, I calmly presented the facts, the permits, and the HOA bylaws, and each time, she backed off, slightly. The real kicker came when the HOA board reviewed her behavior. Turns out, Karen's vendetta had ruffled more feathers than just mine. She'd been on other neighbors for everything from the wrong shade of beige on their shutters to leaving their trash cans out for more than 24 hours. The board issued her a formal warning and stripped her of her position as HOA president. I didn't celebrate openly, but I may have fed the koi an extra helping that night. Jake, the neighbor's boy, came by with his little sister a few days later. They knelt by the pond, tossing pellets into the water. "Mom says Karen's moving," he told me. "She says she doesn't like living here anymore." I shrugged. Sometimes people just don't fit in, Jake. He thought about that, then nodded. I'm glad you and the fish are still here. So was I. It's funny. People think the toughest part of being sheriff is the crime. But sometimes the real challenge is keeping the peace when the battle isn't between criminals and the law, but between neighbors and their grr. As for me, I'll keep tending to my pond, badge on my belt when I'm on duty, fishing net in hand when I'm not. And if another Karen comes along, well, let's just say I'm ready.